Now we're joining our Facebook Live with
Everybody's
Derek
awesome.
Yeah.
Palmer. That's Sheriff Derek.
Alright, so everybody that needed to go to conference hall, you gone?
Okay. All right, we're ready to start. Donna Lynn back in the studio. We'll just turn it over to you to join our programming already in progress.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to be here today for your career day. For those of you who don't know, my name is Sheriff Derek Palmer, and I'm the Sheriff of Cherokee County, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But this is Tim Radford. He's from WKRK, and they're broadcasting live both by Facebook and by the radio station. And so it's being broadcast on an AM frequency and FM frequency, and Tim can recite all of those sites it's on. There's too many for me to remember. 105.5, 1320 AM.
Cable TV channel 25, our website country.am, and then we also broadcast on the TuneIn app and the Simple Radio app.
There you go.
And if you have the Alexa, Echo, or Dot, all you can do is say play WKRK, and you can listen to us there as well.
Right. So they're broadcasting this live, and because it's on the internet, it's going around the world. Okay. So we have soldiers that are overseas that are serving in different countries that actually listen to WKRK and watch the Facebook live streams, and so they're watching this around the world today. But like I say, I'm the Sheriff of Cherokee County, and I think it's important for us to understand before we get into careers and choosing a career in law enforcement and what the sheriff is. We need to discuss about what is the sheriff. Okay. And I always like to start this by starting with our police departments. We're here in Murphy, so we have a Murphy Police Department, right? The Murphy Police Department has a police chief that runs that police department. Who does that police chief work for? Who is his boss? Any ideas? Nope. Who?
The government.
The government, but who is the person that he works for? Who appoints the police chief, or who hires the police chief? Does anybody know?
The mayor.
The mayor, right? So if you got a police department, the mayor of that city or the mayor of that town is the one that actually hires that police chief, okay? What about state agencies? Like the North Carolina Highway Patrol. They have a commander that's over that highway patrol, a colonel that runs it. Who does that colonel work for? Who hires that colonel?
The governor.
The governor, right? So that colonel, the governor, is his boss. A town chief, the mayor is his boss. The state police, the governor is his boss. And when I talk about state police, I'm talking about the Highway Patrol, the State Bureau of Investigations, the ALE, a lot of those state agencies, okay? What about federal agencies? The FBI, the DEA, ATF, those federal law enforcement groups. Who's their boss? Who hires their directors? The president, right? They work directly for the president. So if you're the leader of the SBI, if you're the FBI director or the DEA or the ATF, your boss is the president. Okay, what do you think about the sheriff? Who's my boss? Who's the sheriff's boss? Who do I work for?
The chief.
No.
The mayor.
No. Yeah.
The government.
No. Who do you think is my boss? You're my boss. Did you know that? The elected sheriff of a county is the only, remember this, is the only constitutional law enforcement position there is. It is the only law enforcement position that does not have someone who hires you that you answer to. So when people ask me that I want to talk to your boss or I want to go above your head, I always tell them, well, the citizen of Cherokee County is my boss. So you have to talk to the citizens of Cherokee County. Because I don't have to answer to a mayor. I don't answer to the president. I don't answer to the governor. Okay? I answer directly to the people of Cherokee County. That's why it's an elected position. So if I don't do what I need to do, like a police chief doesn't do what he needs to do and he's not being a good police chief, then the mayor can just hire somebody else, right? If the sheriff's not being a good sheriff and the sheriff's not doing what he needs to do, then the people have an election and they vote for another sheriff, okay? So every 4 years we have an election, and every 4 years the people of the county decides who they want their sheriff to be. And so just remember that the sheriff is the only constitutional law enforcement position. And the Supreme Court has also ruled that the sheriff of the county is the highest law enforcement official of that county. Which means that the sheriff is the one who kind of runs everything as far as the law enforcement aspect. Even though I don't physically control the police departments, even though I don't physically control the highway patrol or the State Bureau of Investigations, I'm responsible for what goes on in this county. Just yesterday, we had the U.S. Marshals here yesterday. They had a federal fugitive that they were looking for that they was wanting to pick up. So what do? They came to the sheriff's office. They said, "Sheriff, we need to go pick up this guy. Can you go with us and help us?" "Yes, sir." So we go out and help them pick it up. But the point of that is that because the sheriff is the head law enforcement official within the county, that even federal agencies have to go by what the sheriff says in the county. It's not a good practice, we don't try to, but if there's a problem with the federal agencies, I can request the federal agencies not come into my county. I can request that they stay out of my county. And I can do the same thing with state and other agencies. So it's very important to elect good people as sheriff and have people in that position. Because you don't want somebody in the position of sheriff that is power hungry, or somebody in the position of sheriff who is trying to rule others with an iron fist and try to do things that benefits themselves, okay? So the reason that I want to be sheriff, and the reason I think that we've done a good job since I've been sheriff, is because I understand that we work for the people, and that we do what the people wants us to do, okay? So if anybody talks about the sheriff's boss, you just look at them and say, "I'm the sheriff's boss," okay? Because you're a citizen of Cherokee County, so you're my boss. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to letting you just ask some questions, okay, about law enforcement, about the role of sheriff in the sheriff's office, and I'll jump in here and fill in some things here in a minute. But I'm going to let you ask some questions, and we'll let you ask whatever you want to ask. If it's anything inappropriate, I'll tell you it's inappropriate, and I won't answer it, okay? But most things are not off limits. We can talk about whatever you want to talk about in law enforcement, okay? So does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Is it true that you have to be tased to have a taser?
It's not law that you have to be tased to carry a taser, but most law enforcement agencies do have a policy that if you carry a taser, that you have, part of that training is that you have to be tased with it, so you understand the effects of it, what it feels like when you shock somebody else. Okay? Do you have a question?
No, I forgot.
You forgot already? What do you think the oh, sorry, go ahead.
So, like, do you carry, like for your car, is it like, you carry more weapons, like, in the, like a AR-15, like in the trunk?
I do. I carry a rifle in the trunk of my car, and it's locked down in the trunk, so not just anybody can get it out. Okay? When we carry weapons in the vehicle, we have locks that you have to have a key to unlock it, or a combination code to get them out. That's so nobody steals your weapon out of the car. But we carry additional weapons. All of our deputies that work on the road either carries an AR-15 or a shotgun in the car, one of the two. Okay? Okay?
Do you guys have to like go down and call immediately if something like somebody gets another person in the car?
Well, for vehicle accidents, those are primarily handled by police departments and the highway patrol. We do respond to things. We run a 911 center where all the 911 calls come through. And so we do respond to those 911 calls that come through that center. And depending on the type of call, depends on how quickly we respond to it. If we've got 4 officers out there working today, or 5 or 6 or 10 or however many we've got, but let's say we've got 5 officers and we've got 10 calls coming in, we have to prioritize them as what's the most important, okay? And so obviously if somebody's getting hurt, if there's a chance that somebody can be assaulted or hurt, those are going to take priority on the calls. And then other calls like barking dogs or vandalisms or things like that can wait. Those kind of calls may wait later on in the list until we can get to them, okay? But speaking of that, let me say this before we answer, just remember your questions, okay? Let me say this before we go on to the next question. What do you think, with the sheriff being a constitutional position, what do you think is the responsibilities of a sheriff? What do you think a sheriff is supposed to do by law? Yes, sir, what do you think?
To keep the people safe.
Keep the people safe, okay? Anybody else? What other ideas you got? Yes, sir.
To hire other police officers.
Okay, hire people to help you, right? There are three things that the constitutional law says that the sheriff is supposed to do that I'm required to do for this county, okay? One thing that I'm required to do is keep safety and security in the court system, okay? So when we have court in session and court is going on at the courthouse, the sheriff is to maintain custody and control of the courthouse and to maintain the courts run smoothly and effectively, okay? So we are the protectors of the court. That's why when you go to courts, it doesn't matter if they're in a city or outside a city, you don't see city police officers or highway patrol or SBI or nobody like that bailiffing in a court. You always see sheriff's deputies in a court. And the reason you always see sheriff's deputies in a court is because we're mandated by the law to be the security for that court. The second thing that the sheriff is mandated to do, is required to do, is have custody of the detention center and any jails within the county, okay? So when a person is arrested and they're put in jail, it's the sheriff's responsibility to make sure that person is taken care of, that person gets medical help, that person gets food, that person gets taken care of. If they have any needs while they're in there, it's the sheriff's responsibility to make sure that person is not abused or mistreated while they're in the facility, okay? So that's the first two things the sheriff's responsible for. And the third thing the sheriff is responsible for is the service of civil process. So when you have the courts issuing papers, subpoenaing people to court, or there are people getting divorced or foreclosures or anything that has to do with the court system, that you have to be served a civil process, a paper that summons you to do something, is the sheriff's responsibility to do that, okay? So those are the three things that the sheriff is required or mandated to do. Believe it or not, the sheriff is not mandated to respond to 911 calls. The sheriff is not mandated to respond to domestics and drug activity and all those kind of things that's out there. Now, we all do. All sheriffs in the country do that. We all respond to 911 calls. We all try to help our citizens and respond to the drug issues and the domestics and the assaults and all those kind of things that are happening. But we're not required by law to do that. But we want to do that because we care about our communities and we care about our citizens. So we want to do the best we can to help serve our citizens. Okay? Now, you had some other questions up here. Did you remember your question?
Yeah.
What was your question?
Who can, does Murphy have a SWAT team?
We do. We have a team through the sheriff's office that is SWAT trained, that we can do tactical entries and different things in houses. As a matter of fact, we did one 2 nights ago in a house with a guy that was barricaded in the house and wouldn't come out, that we had warrants on, okay? One thing about that we've changed a little bit in Cherokee County, just so that everybody understands this, is we're moving from, we don't have an organized SWAT team right now. And the reason that we don't have that is because nationwide we have moved from SWAT tactics to rapid deployment tactics, okay? Which when you have your school lockdown here drills, your code red drills and the things you do at the school, those are all things what we call rapid response. Which means there's something going on now, there's a shooter or a problem now, and we respond now to it. We don't wait, okay? What SWAT tactics typically are is that you form a team, you gather, you wait, you negotiate, you try other tactics to get the person out, and you make entry at the last resort, okay? We're moving into that rapid deployment mentality, especially with active shooters, to where we can't wait. We can't wait and form a team. And so what we have done at the sheriff's office, you talked about the weapons in the car. Every car has a what we call a long weapon, either a rifle or a shotgun in the car. And we're training all of our officers into rapid deployment with some SWAT tactics. A lot of our officers have SWAT training and are SWAT certified. But we do that in the event of that the first officers that arrive on the scene, the first ones that can form a team and go take care of what needs to be taken care of. So we don't have to wait on designated people to get there. So those are the things that we're all trying to do to up that rapid response to get there quicker to people. I don't think you've asked a question yet.
What does, like, the person that works inside the jail, what would they have to do with the inmates and stuff like?
Like a detention officer that works in the jail? Well, when an inmate is brought into the jail, when they're arrested, the first thing that we do after a person is arrested is we have to take them in front of a judicial official, okay? They could be a magistrate, they could be a judge, but we have to take them in front of a judge of some sort. And we have to explain to that judge why we arrested them, what our reasons for arresting them was. And the judge makes a determination whether they indeed probably violated the law or not, okay? They're not deciding whether they're guilty or innocent. They're just saying, yeah, they probably did violate the law and they met certain criteria. So if the judge meets that criteria and he says, yeah, you made a good arrest, this person should have been arrested, he will set them a bond, and if they can't make their bond, then they're put in jail. Once they're put into jail, there's some things that we do in Cherokee County, and one of the first things we do is they go through a medical screening. They go through, if they're on drugs or whatever, they go through a detox process. And so the first place they go when they get put in jail is through the medical bay. They get put in medical and they're checked to see if they have any issues or any problems. If they've been on drugs, they go through a detoxification process, try to get those drugs out of their system. Once they're through that process and they're put in general population, some of the duties that the detention officers do is they're mandated by law to make rounds all the time and check on them. So we've got our officers making at least two rounds an hour. Sometimes they make 3. But at least twice an hour, they count every inmate and check on every inmate in the jail, okay? They visually look and count every inmate that's in the jail to make sure they're not having any problems, to make sure they're not in medical distress, to make sure someone's not hurting them. So that's one of their responsibilities. The other responsibility of detention officers is they have to serve meals. They have to make sure they're fed. And there's criteria that goes around that to make sure they're fed. If there's any problems within the jail, if they're having fights or anything like that, it's up to the detention officers to separate them, to keep them from fighting, to move them to different pods within the jail. And there are just a lot of things that detention officers do. They take people back and forth to court. When they have court dates, they take them to doctor's appointments. They take them to psychiatric appointments and different things that there may be. So our detention officers are very busy. They do a lot of work at the jail. That's just a few of the things they do. They do a lot more than that.
Do you get a bunch of druggies?
Huh?
Do you get a bunch of druggies?
In the jail?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. We arrest people with drugs on a daily basis. There's very few days that go by that we don't arrest somebody on drug issues.
Is it true, like, when someone, like, goes crazy, like, you tie them up, like, this whole bunch of, like, crazy, like, rope and stuff?
No, you brought prisoners in the jail?
Yeah.
No, we don't do that kind of stuff anymore. Basically, what happens in jail, if you have someone that's out of control, they go into what they call maximum security side. And what it is, it's single cells that they lock them down in there where they're by themselves, where they can't hurt other people. If they continue to hurt themselves and they're hurting officers or those type of things, there are restraint methods that we can use in the jail. There's one thing we call it the chair, and it's a chair that they put them in that has straps you can strap them down into. But there's certain criteria that has to be met before you can do that. And then if you put someone in a chair, there's other policies you have to follow as far as letting them up and having time they can move and those type of things. You can't keep them restrained all the time.
Yeah.
So those are only on an emergency basis you do that. But more often than not, if someone's acting up in the jail, they're just moved to the maximum security. That's where they're moved to at that point. That's usually enough to do the trick. And there's other things we can do as far as, like they have privileges like phone usage and internet usage where they can send emails and those type of things. They have commissary and visitations and those kind of things. So a lot of those things can be taken away from them for punishment. And so there's ways of doing what you need to do without having to physically restrain people. Did you have a question? Okay, Jim.
So at the job, you guys have like this little place where the inmates can go to play basketball and lift some weights?
No, we don't there. At our facility that we have each pod, we have 4 pods. And each pod has a group of people in each pod. We have like females in one pod, we have sex offenders in one pod, we have federal prisoners in one pod, and then we have general population in another pod. And there's a common area that those folks can come out into. And in that common area, that's where they typically exercise, and they do a lot of push-ups and sit-ups and those type of things, and places they can walk and all that. But we don't have weight rooms that they work out in. Good question?
Have you like ever had like we do a regular traffic stop and they have had a warrant and you arrest them and put them in custody and then you say, there's nothing that can like poke me or
Right.
anything like that. And they say no, because it's by law.
Right.
And then they go into the jail and they have to be searched there, and can they get charged for contraband?
They can. We do, that happens a lot, is we always tell people, as we search them and we arrest them, we always tell people, if you've got drugs on you or anything hidden, now is the time to tell us, okay? Because if we've missed some drugs in your pocket, if they've got them hidden down in their pants, and sometimes people hide stuff up inside them, okay? So if they're doing that and we can't find it, we always tell them, when we get to the jail and the big doors are there that you go through, we always say, on this side of the door is the time to tell us, okay? Because if we go through those doors and then we find it on the other side of those doors, not only can you be charged with having it, but there's another charge for taking it inside of jail. And so we always try to give people those opportunities to tell us what they have, okay? Yes, sir.
Do you monitor every email that they send out, every phone call that they make? stuff like
We,
that?
we do not physically look at every email and listen to every phone call, but every email and every phone call is recorded. And so if there's a question of something that was said or done, we can go back and review those and look at those. And we do have some inmates that we know that are causing trouble or trying to sneak contraband into the jail and those type of things, that we may look at that particular inmate's emails or cell phone or phone calls and monitor those on a daily basis to see if they're trying to do anything. Okay? Yes, sir.
I have two questions.
Okay?
The first question have you ever had someone try to break out jail?
Okay. What's your second question?
The second one is, have you ever had a big fight in jail?
Okay. Has anybody ever tried to break out of jail? Yes. Has everybody successfully broken out of jail? Yes. Not in our current facility. Our current facility has been there since 2007, and no one has broken out of this jail. Okay? The old jail that we had before we built this new facility had several escapes in it. And we caught several people that escaped out of that jail. As far as fights in the facility, we have got a different schedule now that we're running. That when I first took over, everybody was out at the same time, and there was a lot of fights happen, a lot of contraband, those type of things. But we've worked the schedule out now where only sections come out at a time. That's really helped with the fighting and helped with the assault. So we don't have the big fights like we used to have.
What's the most common type of drug that people get arrested for?
It could literally be anything, but what we see primarily in our area right now is either methamphetamine or prescription pills. Those are the most prevalent things. We went through a spell last year, a couple years ago, where heroin was a big thing. We're seeing a lot of heroin. We arrested some of the main dealers for that, and we don't hardly see that anymore. But we're still seeing a lot of methamphetamine in the area.
Has anything ever gotten taken into the jail without y'all knowing?
Yes, it has. And like I say, I know this is kind of gross, and I don't want to get in detail about it, but males and females do hide things up inside their body cavities. Okay? And so not only drugs, but sometimes they hide weapons up inside. And so sometimes we have a process that we go through that when people are booked into the facility, that we actually have detention officers that check in those places. You know, we have certain protocols that happens that gives the officers an opportunity to see if they're hiding anything up in there. We don't always find it though. We don't always see it because we can't physically touch people. Okay, so when they're hiding drugs and weapons that way, we can't physically touch them and search for it. So we have to go with other methods of trying to see if we can retrieve those things. But sometimes it don't work. Sometimes they get them in the jail, and then we find it later. Okay. Yes, sir.
Don't the inmates have jobs?
Some do. Some of the inmates that are in jail are for things like child support, where husband and wife have split up, they've had a divorce, and one has to pay child support to the other. Sometimes when they don't pay that child support, they get behind, and the judge finds them in contempt of court because there's a court order to pay it. Okay? So what happens a lot of times is once those people are in jail, and others, but primarily those on child support, is they have an opportunity to do what they call work release. So they can go out during the day, they can work a job and make money to pay off that debt, but yet they still have to be in jail until they're released from the courts. So they get out certain times a day, they have to come back. Okay?
Have you ever had to arrest a child for doing something bad, like drugs or something like that?
We have, we cannot house people in our jail that's under the age of 16. They have to be 16 or older. But people under 16 do commit crimes, and we do find those from time to time. We've been high-speed chases with kids that are 13, 14 years old. We've found middle schoolers in possession of drugs. We've had young people, early teens, arrested for weapons violations and things like that. But we can't arrest them and put them inside our facility. What happens if you're under the age of 16, it's turned over to a juvenile court and a juvenile officer. And then he will take possession and do the appropriate thing that needs to do with that. Okay? Yes,
How
sir.
many kids have you put in juvenile?
I have no idea. Believe it or not, there's not many. We typically in Cherokee County, and I say this all the time and it's true, it's not because I'm here today, but it's just true. We have good group of young people in Cherokee County. We really do. And I was a resource officer here in the school system. I know that even when I was here, there was very few kids in the school system that you would label bad kids. 99% of the kids in the school system are good kids. And so that's the same thing true outside of school. So we don't arrest young people on a daily basis. That's very rare that we do that. Yeah.
Okay, so like, if somebody in Cherokee County, like, say, like, somebody got arrested in Andrews, would they be, like, transported to the detention center?
They would.
What?
There's one detention center for the county. So if the Highway Patrol or Andrews Murphy Police Department or State Bureau Investigations here or anybody like that or the Sheriff's Office makes an arrest, they all go to the detention center. That's the place where they go to get processed.
And say, like, somebody in the jail, you would have to, like, take them to Raleigh or something?
Once they're sentenced in court, and if they're committed to the Department of Corrections, then the detention officer has to take them to Raleigh. That's where their intake is, in Raleigh. And they're processed there, and then they may go to a prison somewhere in the state, but it starts there in Raleigh. Yes, sir.
What would the juvenile leaders do to the children that get put in juvenile?
Well, there's a lot of things that can happen. It depends on the crime. It depends on what the person's charged with if they're underage. If it's a violent crime, if that kid is, like I said before, we've had them with high-speed chases. So if they put a lot of people in danger, or they've had weapons violations, or they hurt somebody, they could actually be taken into custody and put in a juvenile holding center, like in Asheville or somewhere like that. It could actually be like jail that they go to. More often than not, if it's a juvenile and it's a non-violent crime and they're maybe just having some problems and just being disruptive at school and at home and maybe doing some petty type crimes but nothing violent, it may start with what they call a diversion. It may start with the juvenile courts just making you like being on probation, saying you have to do certain things, and if you do these certain things, we'll clear all this up. But if you don't do it, then you'll find yourself in the court system. It could be facing going to a juvenile center. So there's a lot of different things they can do within that court system. It's like being arrested as an adult. There's a lot of different ways they can handle it. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Huh?
It's about time, so.
Okay. One more question.
Okay, so, have you ever chased somebody, get on a dirt bike?
Yeah, I have actually several times. Yeah, I have. And the thing about it is, and I'm gonna say this about chases because we get asked a lot of questions about chases. Chases are very scary. Okay, and sometimes when your adrenaline's pumping and you're on that dirt bike and you don't want to stop and you run to the police or whatever, sometimes your adrenaline's pumping and you don't think about the consequences. But you can actually be hurt or killed by doing that. And someone could have an accident, somebody else could be hurt or killed. So the best thing is just abide by the law and do the best you can. And remember that we're here to help you, okay? Let me say this, because I think another class is fixing to come in. But let me say this, okay? And I say this to everybody I talk to, and I really mean it. I know that some of you may have things going on at home, whether it's drug issues or abuse issues or just problems there that you need to talk to somebody about. Just know that we're there for you to talk to, okay? If you got any issues you want to talk to me about, feel free to call me, contact the resource officers. They will talk to you, and we'll help you with any situation you have. I'd love to answer your other questions, but I think it's time to go. We've got another class coming in. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're gonna leave yourself here.
And that was our Sheriff, Derek Palmer. That was his program for today. Career Day at Murphy Middle School.